Oh, good. Gretchen's recording. Isn't that wonderful? Everything just goes on. Just engaged Buddhism. Part of me has always thought that's such a funny word. How could you not be an engaged Buddhist? There's no way to be not an engaged Buddhist, because you're engaged in life, whether you think you are or not. And for me, being who I am, is I came to Buddhism. I was probably I'm going to be a little facetious here. I was probably way too dumb to come to Buddhism because of my own suffering. I didn't think I was suffering. I mean, I was young. But I did know the world was suffering. So I always knew that. And then what do? What's the appropriate response? So for me, I've never been able to separate out being practicing to wake this self up and to be in relationship with those just around me, but it's always had to do with the suffering of the world. And I think for other people, I mean, of course that's true, because you can't be alive and not have some sense of, if you walk down the street, of homelessness, or you're even a little bit tuned into the news, or climate change. But for some people, that's not how they lead. And I think that's really important. I think that's, we each find out what our Dharma position and what our love and gift is. And so for that reason, I think I've always, I've been doing a racial and social justice as Dharma practice group for over a decade. And I'll continue to do that forever, because I can't help myself. But I've never kind of wanted to impose it on the Sangha, because I want everybody to be here and find out what's important for you, and how do you, it's like, Ellen does many things, but one of the things she does is she takes care of the whole world by taking care of bees. It's like, that's so beautiful. And some people dance, and some people do art, and there's just, the world is that big. But bodhisattvas always know. And when we forget, we remind each other, our vows remind each other that we're doing this with and for the whole world, whatever it is you're doing. And then find out what it is you love, and do that passionately. I mean, do that wholeheartedly. And maybe sometimes the suffering of social injustice and gun violence and climate change spills over, and you just have to go do something, do that too. But please listen to your own hearts and bodies. But having said all that, somehow I came back from this trip and I just thought, what are we going to do next? Hell, we're going to do engaged Buddhism. So who knows why or when or how, but I want to do this in a way that's really thoughtful, heartful. Someone said, someone retranslated mindfulness into heartfulness. Because whatever we do, and maybe you saw a couple of weeks ago, I put in an article in the newsletter that Norman Fisher wrote about mindfulness is love. This is, we have wonderful minds, but minds on top of bodies that stand on the earth, that are connected to the sky and the heavens, and that don't, in Zazen, we don't know where we begin or end. That's the beauty of Zazen. It's such a deep and beautiful breathing in, breathing out the whole world practice. So what I want to do is, for me, being aware, educating myself. It's like educating myself about racism. One of the amazing gifts of this time is there's such a process of waking up. Because we thought racists were those other people over there. And then lo and behold, you begin to notice your own, with the help of kind of what's turning in the world, of watching my own thoughts and how I divide and how I separate, and thoughts that arise that I didn't even know were there. I'm constantly amazed by, so I'll do a little digression here. We're sitting here, those of us in the room. And the cushion is on the ground here. And you hear this drip. Did you all hear it? Yeah. It's really loud. And Joy, who coordinates here, said to me the other day that the fire extinguisher dripper things, you know, that would get triggered by a fire, they're leaking. And so I thought, oh, when I first started practicing, one of the sayings that first caught my attention was, practice as if your head is on fire. And I thought, I'm going to practice as if my head is on fire. And I didn't know what it meant, but it felt like it had a lot of energy and it was really urgent. Took me a while to figure out that my nervous system, one, was just personally on fire, that I really needed to learn how to calm down, that running around and getting more upset and on fire wasn't going to help anybody, least of all me. But I also think it's a really wonderful metaphor that somehow this water is reminding us, because the teaching in Buddhism is that the world is on fire. And our heads are on fire. The more I practice, the more I calm down, the more I notice my head is on fire, for goodness sakes. It's on fire with the passions. It's on fire with greed. I want what I want. It's on fire with anger and aversion, and I like it and I don't like it. And it's on fire with ignorance of, just delusion. And then gun violence. I mean, good heavens, what's happening? The world is on fire. You don't even have to stretch very far with that metaphor. And war in Ukraine and Russia and the Sudan and climate, the world is the fires and drying up, and we found out so much about the pandemic of not everybody has the same amount of water or the same amount of nourishment or the same amount of care. So, but Buddhism, another beautiful metaphor in Buddhism is, it's like taking a cool drink of water. Somehow the water dripping here today, maybe the rains that have come and the grass and everything green coming up, is I want us to do this in a way that instead of making us more on fire, more scared and more angry and more, I really want to help us be aware of the fires and the suffering of the world in a way that encourages us to open and to sit more clearly and strongly in the middle of it, so that we can be aware of our own states of mind, and that we can breathe in the places where, in some ways, I think what a bodhisattva does is where everybody else, including me, not from time to time, most of the time, is bodhisattvas in places where people get scared, where I get scared, where I shut down, where all the doors and windows close, is that there's some expanded capacity to breathe and to touch the ground and to stay grounded and to stay present. Because how in the world are you going to help anybody or anything if you can't even know where your body is, or have the capacity to look at your mind and go, oy, oy, oy. with some kind of kindness and even some kind of sense of humor sometimes, and often a great sense of sadness. Whoa, whoa, whoa. So here's what I want to start with today, and I'm going to be feeling my way through this, but and listening as I do this, is Dogen's the Bodhisattva's 4 methods of guidance. It's one of the clearest, actually most accessible things that Dogen wrote, I think, because it's just it's poetry, but it's giving, loving speech, beneficial action, and identity action. So as we investigate through the words of, and I want to use the direct transmission like today from bell hooks. We all know about bell hooks. I probably read this a long time ago. Maybe you did too. And I read it again recently, all about love, new visions. I want to keep grounding it in Buddhism and in Buddhist teachings so that we know this isn't something separate. And I also think I will probably, and I'll do it tonight with the precepts class, Thich Nhat Hanh, the precepts there's a whole bunch of commentaries in this wonderful little book called For a Future to Be Possible. It's commentaries on the precepts, and not only are there his commentaries, but there's commentaries by a good number of people. So to me, this is all about Bodhisattva vow, and it's about precepts on the ground, living it. So I thought this weekend when we sit, there's room for a little Dharma talk in there. And I want to say more about Dogen's, the 28th chapter of the Shobogenzo, Bodhisattva Shishobo. I thought I sent it to Ellen to put it in the newsletter this week, as I found something that has about 6 different translations of the fascicle. Now you may know that I love this. It's so much fun to look at how many different ways a word can be translated and to find out. So where does it enter for you? I read recently someone was making a commentary on this, and someone had translated a word, if I'm remembering correctly, as shame, and someone else did another translation and said self-dignity. What really different feeling tone comes up with those 2 words, shame and self-dignity. Even when I did it, shame, I did one thing with my body, and self-dignity, I did it with another. So if you get into this, I thought I would just start by, here's a translation, Shohaku Okamura and Alan Sanaki, and they entitle this fascicle, The Bodhisattva's 4 Embracing Actions. Isn't that nice? Embracing, how to embrace being in the world. Lou Richmond and Kaz Tanahashi translate it as Bodhisattva's 4 Methods of Guidance. That's the one I've always just kind of internalized, but I'm liking now. Here's another one, translated from the Japanese. 4 Elements of a Bodhisattva's Social Relations. Isn't that interesting? How do you be in social relationship with the world? Do you like this? I think this is, and the 4th one is this is by Tom Wright, who does a lot of really good commentaries and writing in Buddhism, and his translation is 4 Dimensions of a Living Bodhisattva Spirit. Whoa! So enter it wherever you might. But let me just it's a little bit from a Katagiri Roshi commentary on this. Attachment to the self. I like myself. No, I don't. Some really don't like myself. But I'm pretty sure I'm a self, except for moments where I'm not sure that I'm a self, and there is much more freedom and play but when we can let go of it, and we do let go of it in Zazen, and we have moments and tastes in longer retreats and in ceremony, or sometimes a bird song, is all of a sudden everything is close and intimate and there's no gap. And we do have a taste, and we do understand that we are so deeply and radically interconnected and woven in and out with everything across time and space that we can't even begin to imagine what's really going on or who we really are. And then I think mostly our little selves just get scared and something happens and we go, ah, and we go running back to our opinions and because it may not always be comfortable, but at least we know who we are, or think we know who we are. And that's when we're running back into our karmic body. It's a conditioned body, which is, how else are you going to wake up with and for all beings if you don't know what it feels like to be in this deeply conditioned karmic body that everybody else has if you don't study this one? So it's like, oh, thank you, Buddha. I am so confused. My head is on fire and my heart has this really deep yearning. And I had it a minute ago and I lost it. But then I read the news and I think, oh my goodness, practice as if my head is on fire with and for the whole world, because oh my goodness. So Bodhisattva vow is, I vow to live with and for all beings. Impossible. I have no idea how to do it, but that's my heart. My heart has always, since I was a little kid. You don't need to know this, but my sister says the first time she really knew it was, do you remember going to Peter Pan, and when Peter Pan died and it went to the theater, maybe this, I mean, it certainly dates me, but everybody in the theater had to like call out to wake up Peter Pan because you needed Peter Pan to come back to life. And my sister says that I was the loudest one in the whole theater. So it's just that kind of feeling of like something's really wrong here and you have to do something. You all have stories like this. I know what you do. And Dogen says that no thing in the universe ever falls short of its own completeness. Never in anything is anything insufficient. It's complete and perfect just as it is. And the more we can meet each thing that way, the more, instead of being in opposition to it, we can align with it. And then we can find out what's the most, is in Dogen's words, what's the most generous response that comes out of generosity instead of fear? What's loving speech as opposed to, we know all kinds of speech. Maybe I don't have to model the speech that isn't loving or in harmony with starting with accepting where we are, and then how can I be of help? Beneficial action is, how can I dedicate my life that no matter what I'm doing, I'm aware that it's for the benefit of all beings. How I wash my plate, how much water I'm using, the plastic bags, everything, everything. Our good thoughts, our bad thoughts, just keep dedicating it, saying, I want to use this. This is my vow, is I want to turn and be turned by this for the benefit of all beings. Identity action is the most, I think, interesting and the most difficult, because identity action, I remember Norman Fisher saying to me, so what is that? And I said, well, it's to be able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. And he went, it's way more intimate than that. It really is. I'll give you a taste of Dogen. Dogen defines identity action as non-difference from self and others. I mean, that you really, in a visceral way, there is no gap. It comes out of that place where it's Zazen body. There's no gap. Non-difference from self, from other people, from creatures, animate and inanimate objects. And it includes everything, all times, all dimensions, but it's not an idea. It's called awake with and for all beings. Okay, so having said all that, and I'll do more of that on Sunday, I want to tell you a little bit about from Bell Hooks, who I'm pretty certain, I'm almost positive, was a Buddhist practitioner. Yeah. So I just want to, maybe I'm just going to read you some quotes from her, because she certainly was an engaged Buddhist. She was very active in the world and very vocal. But the ground. Loving, the importance of loving. When we are loving, we openly and honestly express care, affection, responsibility, respect, commitment, and trust. Maybe the question at the end of this is, what does love mean to you? Because that's the essence of mindfulness in the Bodhisattva vow. Definitions are vital starting points for the imagination. What we cannot imagine cannot come into being. A good definition marks our starting point and lets us know where we want to end up. That's why Dogen's 4 methods, like, sparks my imagination all over the place. But love, what is it? It's all about love. What is it? Then she talks about commitment. Maybe just like people taking Bodhisattva vows on Sunday. Maybe like commitment of just showing up to Sangha. It says, let love be love in me. Commitment to truth-telling. Ooh, that's scary. Using a working definition of love tells us it is an action we take on behalf of our own or another's spiritual growth and provides us with a beginning blueprint for working on the issue of self-love. Ooh, don't skip the self. Sorry. It's so easy to jump out of the self and jump out there for some poor soul. It starts when we see love as a combination of trust, commitment, care, respect, knowledge, and responsibility. We can work on developing these qualities, or if they are already a part of who we are, we can learn to extend them to. And if they are already a part of who we are, we can learn to extend them to ourselves. They are already a part of who we are. How do we include ourselves in it? Simply taking responsibility does not mean that we can prevent discriminatory acts from happening. But we can choose how we respond to acts of injustice. Taking responsibility, that means that in the face of barriers, we still have the capacity to invent our lives, to shape our destinies in ways that maximize our well-being. Every day we practice this shape shifting to cope with realities we cannot easily change. How do you cope with realities you cannot easily change? We've all lived long enough to know the truth of that one. She talks about spirituality. Thomas Merton. Love is, in fact, an intensification of life, a completeness, a fullness, a wholeness of life. Life curves upward to a peak of intensity, a high point of value and meaning at which all its latent creative possibilities go into action. Whoa, we're an agent of creative possibilities. Wow, that's how I want to live. And I know that I need all of you to be able to do that, because My creative imagination is huge, but if I put it together with all of yours and the rest of the world and things that other people know that I don't know, oh my goodness, that's where I get excited. We do not become fully human until we give ourselves to each other in love. We can co-create reality with other beings. Then she talks about values. The reason I want to do this is because this isn't, to me, it's like she's a layperson. She's a deeply engaged human being in the world, and she's speaking the exact same language that we do. Care, commitment, trust, responsibility, respect, and knowledge in our everyday lives. We can successfully do this only by cultivating awareness. Being aware enables us to critically examine our actions to see what is needed so that we can give care, be responsible, show respect, and indicate a willingness to learn. Bodhisattvas, here we are. Greed, whoa. Sharon Salzberg says, a fading away of greed and hatred is the foundation for liberation, for freedom. Liberation is the sure heart's release, an understanding of the truth so powerful that there is no turning back from it. Greed, study greed, not as something bad, but as something actually kind of fascinating. It's like study, well, let's see, it says here, we are all vulnerable. We have all been tempted. Even those of us committed to an ethic of love are sometimes tempted by greedy desires. No, really? These are dangerous times. And she was writing this some time ago. And I think things maybe got a little better, but it's always been, but these are dangerous times. It is not just the corrupt who fall sway to greed. Individuals with good intentions and kind hearts can be swept away by unprecedented access to power and privilege. Please pay attention. Don't think it's out there. Greed subsumes love and compassion. Living simply makes room for them. What is it to live simply? Community. What is it to live in relationship to community? Mutual giving strengthens community. Enjoying the benefits of living and loving in community empowers us to meet strangers without fear and extend to them the gift of openness and recognition. Just by speaking to a stranger, acknowledging their presence on the planet, we make a connection. It's why we come to Sangha. It's why we don't sit on a little cushion all by ourselves and think we have it all together. As you come to Sangha and you have to stretch a little bit. Some people it's easy with, some people, well, you know, or that person just did something, or we're all pretty homogenous, for goodness sakes. But practicing in community is really important. Just a little bit more. You'll have to humor me. Oh dear, look at what time. Mutuality. Giving is a thoroughly joyous thing to do. When we give something to someone, we feel connected to them, and our commitment to the path of peace and awareness deepens. Merton again. We discover our true selves in love. To love fully and deeply puts us at risk. Don't ever think it's not risky to love. Watch the edge of where it gets scary. Study it. When we love, we are changed utterly. Merton says love affects more than our thinking and our behavior towards those we love. It transforms our entire life. Genuine love is a personal revolution. Love takes your ideas, your desires, and your actions and welds them together in one experience and one living reality, which is a new you. And last, healing. Well, maybe it's not the last, but it will be. James Baldwin. I do not mean to be sentimental about suffering, but people who cannot suffer can never grow up, can never discover who they are. Growing up is at heart the process of learning to take responsibility for whatever happens in your life. To choose growth is to embrace a love that heals. Okay, maybe that's enough. I'm going to put you together in little groups, maybe 2 and 3, and I'll put you in 2s and 3s, and you have about 10 minutes. What is a love that heals? Or any of this? What's it have to do with engaged Buddhism? But why are we starting out here by talking about love? Okay, just explore it. And I'll call you back. You'll have 10, 12 minutes, and let me figure out how to put you all in groups. Talk about love. What's it have to do with all of this anyway? And what is it anyway?